Hi there. I wanted to make a quick video about my Jackson Pro Series SL3R, which I bought online yesterday. And I've got some mixed feelings about it. So I want to put this video out there, show people the guitar, tell people what I think of it, and hopefully get some comments about what other people think of theirs if other people have the same guitar. Um, So yeah, there it is. It's the SL3R. I'll try not to get too much glare because this is the shiniest guitar that's ever been made. But that's not why I bought it. Actually, if they made the guitar in sort of a less extreme finish, that's probably what I would have got. But this is what they offered. Um, the things that I want to mention about this guitar. First of all, I'll start off with the things that I like. Um, the reason I got it was primarily because of the neck profile. The neck profile is very thin. Um, and that was really what I was looking for. I was looking for something with a Floyd and a very thin neck, 24 frets, and a reverse headstock, ideally, which is what this has. So it fit the bill, and I like those features. The guitar showed up, and it plays really well. The tone's great. It's got a different pickup configuration than anything I've used before, and it actually has some very unique and very useful and nice tones. And it plays really, really nicely. Um, I like the feel of that neck. Obviously, it's got the Floyd Rose, which I've got a lot of guitars from that bridge. I'm familiar with it. It's very nice. Um, the the geometry of the body, the set neck, the um, the body shape, the headstock is very cool. I like the way the neck is unfinished. They say it's oil rubbed. It's clearly not painted the way the body is. It's got a nice finish. The hand moves very freely on it. It's very nice. The ebony on the fretboard is just gorgeous. I don't know if they dyed it. I kind of don't think so. There's no dye coming off on my fingers or anything silly like that. So I think it's just a really nice piece of very black ebony. Um, yeah, those are the things I like about it. The finish is actually very cool. They did a really good job on the mirror. It's really nice. Um, yeah, so those are the things I like. Getting on to some of the things I don't really like. This is, as I mentioned, it's part of their Pro series. They have the JS, the X, the Pro, the MJ, and the US. Those are their different lines. And commensurately, they go up in quality and features and price, starting at the JS and moving all the way up to the US. Being the Pro, this is basically in the middle. And what I compare it to would be like a Prestige Ibanez made in Indonesia, or the Pro Mod Charvels made in Mexico. Um, I think this is about equivalent in price. This guitar retails for about 2,200 Canadian. I believe it's about 1,600 US. So it's not a cheap guitar. It's not a super expensive guitar. So comparing it to those other brands and those lines in their lineup, I basically had some expectations of what this guitar was going to be like. And I have to say, I don't think it measures up. And I'll describe what I mean by that. And if people have different experiences with this guitar, then I'd really love to hear about it, because this is it's the only Jackson I've ever owned, and it's the only Pro Jackson that I've ever owned. So I'll start off with some of the things that I think make this guitar maybe not comparable to those other guitars. First of all, this guitar is made in China. I don't know if you can see it. Um, I don't think that means anything necessarily, but there are some things about this guitar that make me question whether the quality and the features are up to snuff with like a made in Mexico Pro Mod Charvel. Um, the fret finish, these frets, by the way, it's advertised as having jumbo frets. There's no way, like not on any world I live in, are those jumbo frets. These are comparable to the frets that are on my 90s Ibanez guitars. So I think these are more like a 6105 style fret. Nowhere near a jumbo fret. The finish on the frets, they're pretty scratchy. It's not what I'd expect in a $2,000 guitar. What else? The electronics, the pickups are great. I mean, these are Seymour Duncan pickups. They sound great, but the rest of the electronics, the pots and the jack, this switch is okay-ish, but these pots are tragic. When the guitar first arrived, uh, the pots are held on just with a simple lock, not even a lock nut, just a simple nut on top, not a lock washer or anything, and they were not even finger tight. Like turning the knobs would spin the pot rather than spinning the shaft in the pot. Um, Furthermore, the friction on these pots is higher than any pot I've ever seen on a guitar. Like you can barely do that where you put your pinky on it and roll it. It's just sliding on my finger rather than turning. You really have to turn it. I've never seen, like, I don't like the really loose pots like the EVH volume pot, but I also don't like having to reef on it. That's just really odd. And they're both like that, the tone and the volume. Furthermore, this volume pot has the wrong taper on it. With a volume pot, you want to be able to control the volume of the guitar so that you can clean up your amp and set, whether you want, a cleaner tone or a more distorted tone. And with this, when you go from 10 and start dialing it back, the volume doesn't really change until you get to like 2, and then all of a sudden it just drops to 0. So I believe it's just the wrong taper of pot that they put in there. The jack, the output jack, this is the worst output jack I've ever seen on anything. There's nothing holding this cable in. In fact, I'm sure that if I just stood up, the weight of the cable would pull it out. The leaf spring that attaches to the tip of the cable is the flimsiest piece of metal. It's like tinfoil. It's just a piece of junk. So the pots and that jack are just like, to make this guitar playable, I would have to replace them, which is a major shame. I don't think that a guitar that costs $2,000 should come with parts that need to be replaced. I wouldn't expect parts of that quality on a $1,000 guitar. The finish on the frets, similarly. I have a made in Mexico Pro Mod Charvel, and it is head and shoulders higher quality than this guitar. It's a real shame. It doesn't make any sense to me because the cost to the manufacturer of putting decent hardware in a guitar like that, it's insignificant. Why they would cheap out and put junk like that in a $2,000 beautiful guitar like this that's otherwise very nice makes no sense to me. Which is why I'd like to get other people's impression, because I suspect that when Charvel designed this guitar and when they planned their marketing for it, they may not have intended to build it in China. They may have intended to build it in Mexico or Indonesia. And maybe they even built a few there. I'd kind of like to hear if other people have had different Pro Series or the SL3R specifically made elsewhere, not in China. I'd like to hear about that. But I think when this guitar went to be manufactured in China, they just lowered the spec on a whole bunch of things. These things in the hardware, they may have even changed the frets. The finish on the frets is just not good. There's no fret sprout, but it's a bound neck, so you're not going to get that anyway. So it's quite disappointing. I bought this guitar online. I didn't play it in the shop before I bought it. I bought it on spec, and it's quite disappointing. I think to make, like, I really do like it. It plays really, really well. It sounds really good, but the playing experience and the quality is just pretty bad. So it's going to need some work before I'm happy with it. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed. I think Jackson did something really weird here. They had an opportunity to make a guitar that I think would compete easily with the Pro Mod Charvels, which is very strange. Jackson and Charvel are both owned and built by Fender. There's no reason Fender couldn't have built this guitar in the same factory that builds the Pro Mod Charvels, and they should have. For the price, they absolutely should have. This guitar should not be made in China with dodgy parts and bad finish. It really ruins what would otherwise be a really, really excellent guitar. Ruins it for now. I mean, I can fix these things, but I shouldn't have to. So yeah, that's my impression. And another reason I'm making this video is I haven't seen a lot of videos about this particular guitar. How many people are going to buy a guitar like that? I mean, I didn't buy it for the finish. I bought it for other features. But I'd like to hear what other people think about their experience with it. Um, that's about it. But I'll end on a more positive note. Like I said, there are lots of things that I do like about this guitar. Um, I like the neck profile. It's a thin neck. It's not as thin. My reference, I've got an old gem, a 7 DBK, which has the thinnest neck they ever put on a gem. And I think it's about equivalent to a Super Wizard neck. And this is not as thin as the Super Wizard neck, but it's pretty thin, which I like. I don't know, I don't have a radius gauge for the fretboard. They claim that it's a compound radius. The radius is actually not as flat as I had expected. They don't have any specs for the radius. Their website isn't as thorough as Ibanez, where they tell you everything down to the millimeter. They don't tell you what the radius. Well, no, they do. They do actually tell you it's a compound. I don't remember what the specs are, but I expected it to be flatter. But the nut width I like. It's a bit of a wider neck, but not really wide. It's just a modern width neck, right? It's wider than what you get on a Charvel San Dimas, more like what you get on an Ibanez. So I do like the neck overall. I like the finish on the back. I like the thickness and the shape. The ebony is great. I don't like this trend. I mean, I like the way guitars look without fret markers. This has very subtle ones, but when you're playing, they're totally invisible. They're mirror like the rest of the guitar. When you look down and play, you can't see them at all. So you're relying on the fret markers on the edge, which when you're up past the 12th fret and you're trying to solo up here, I get lost really fast. So I prefer to see fret markers. But everything else about this guitar, the bridge works great. The pickups sound really good. I like the variety of tones from this guitar. I'm not used to having single coil, particularly in the neck, but on my humbucker guitars, I do use a coil tap on the neck position a lot. And even with this not having that, I do like the tones that you get. You get some interesting tones. The way they've done the 5-way on this is actually unique. I've never seen switching like it, and it sounds pretty neat. So yeah, it looks good, it feels good. And aside from some really hard to understand things, I think I'm going to like this guitar. So as I said, I'd like to see other people's comments because there's not a lot of information about this guitar online. So that's it. Thanks.